tragedy and offered their assistance. So I don't want them slighted just because they're not standing behind me. Additionally, I have a chief of police next to me, and that's Chief Troy Tanner of the Mesquite PD. He has been instrumental in the assistance of his folks towards us to help us complete this investigation. So I think it's appropriate that he gets recognized for their effort. And then Greg Castle, he's just very humble. He's obviously the Clark County Fire Chief, and he likes to stand in the back. But where we are different in our jurisdiction, as through my travels in comparison to other jurisdictions, we work very well with the fire department, and they did not hesitate to pair up with an officer and enter the fray. So I want to thank him for that. Thank you, Greg. So I'm happy to answer some questions. As you know, the investigation is continuing, so please do not get too detailed on your questions, because I probably will not be able to answer it at this time.
Sheriff Lombardo?
Yes, sir.
You know, the search of the resident out in the state, has anything been pulled there in the way of computer information or anything which gives anything towards voting or what this man might have? And you mentioned a second location in northern Nevada.
No, the second location is just based off assessor's records of ownership. We discovered that he owned another piece of property in northern Nevada. As far as the electronic evaluation, we haven't had the opportunity to do that yet. The only thing we are immediately aware in our position is additional firearms and ammunition.
People were hit with shrapnel at the exit. That's what Mayor Goodman said. I want you to follow up on that. And also, how did he get these weapons into the hotel room in Mandalay Bay?
Well, like I said, we're doing the investigation. I don't want to give you any inaccurate information, but we do know that he brought the weapons in on his own. In an original briefing, we believe that he was in partnership or companionship of a female, and we have determined the female is out of the country. So he brought these weapons in on his own. As far as method, I don't have the ability to give you an accurate picture.
Was the shooter known to local law enforcement here in Clark County or Las Vegas? Any prior charges or anything like that?
No, not at all. We've checked all the federal databases and local databases and state databases, and we had no knowledge of this individual.
Sheriff, are we going to change the designation on the woman who was involved with this man from a person of interest for a possible accomplice or suspect?
No, it's still we still consider her a person of interest. We have been in contact with her, and we plan to engage her upon her return to the country.
Do you have any idea how he was able to break through the windows? Was he able to open the windows, or did he smash the windows? Have you pieced that together?
We believe he had a device similar to a hammer to smash the windows.
Sheriff, so far I've heard a description of the suspect as a lone wolf. Is the investigation looking into any potential ties, even loose ties to extremist groups?
Well, obviously we will do that. We will run it down to the very end. But right now, at face value, we haven't been able to identify that.
Sheriff, you said he checked in on Thursday, the 28th, to the hotel.
I believe that's accurate.
Did he have tickets to the concert?
I have no idea. So.
Do you know what he has done between checking in and
no,
last night?
we're following up on that. There will be hours and hours and hours of video surveillance that we will have to recall with the cooperation of the MGM.
Trying to proceed on private and safety. We've seen your center upstairs where you keep
the Fusion Center?
Correct. There are cameras everywhere. Practically every inch of the city is covering a camera. Outdoors, indoors. How did this happen?
Well, I don't understand what you're alluding to. How could it happen? This is an individual who was described as a lone wolf. I don't know how it could have been prevented if we didn't have any prior knowledge to this individual. It wasn't evident that he had weapons in his room. We have determined that there has been employees going to and fro from his room, and nothing nefarious was noticed at this point. That's what we know now. So.
Sheriff, first responders were integral to stopping more deaths. Can you describe how a multi-agency effort and strike teams were able to find the suspect?
Well, yeah, you're absolutely correct. So any special event that takes place in the southern Nevada region, it's required by NRS to supply police officers to ensure security. The Mandalay Bay did a great job of hiring police officers. They had sufficient staffing for the concert. And when this individual decided to fire upon the crowd, which was approximately 22,000 individuals, it's very difficult to manage that size crowd, and you have to ensure you have the proper staffing. And as described, our officers responded immediately in conjunction with the fire department as soon as the fire department arrived, but they were able to identify where the weapon was being discharged from. In a proximity, it's hard to tell what floor it is. Entry into the hotel in conjunction with security, and through phone calls from patrons, they were able to call it down to a possible floor. Once they made entry onto the hallway, they immediately knew what room was in question.
Sheriff, there's some dramatic reports about what exactly happened in the room when SWAT officers entered, that maybe there was so much smoke from the shells that the smoke alarms were going off. Is there any truth to any of that?
I don't know. I haven't been told about any smoke alarms, but I know that he had killed himself, and exactly we'll have to go through our body-worn camera and existing video whether we engaged him at the same approximate time or not.
Sheriff, you said you didn't believe that this was connected to ISIS. Do you have any idea of what kind of motives we could be looking at?
No, ma'am. I can't get into the mind of a psychopath at this point.
Sheriff, on the investigation that's going on right now at the site of the shooting, how extensive is it, and what are we talking about as far as Las Vegas Boulevard being shut down while the ballistics and the criminals do their work out there?
Well, I believe we've got most of Las Vegas Boulevard open. Directly adjacent to the Mandalay, it still remains closed. We'll ensure that we go out to the proper intersections to limit the hindrance of traffic. But we're looking at a minimum of 12 additional hours for documentation of the crime scene and the removal of the bodies.
Do you know about how long he was able to shoot for, and do you happen to know if there was ever any return fire from officers on the ground in any way?
No, I'm not aware of any return fire, nor am I aware of the timeline, but we did have SWAT officers discharge weapons at the room location.
Is the ATF checking the weapons right now to determine if any of them were legal or illegally converted?
Yes, the federal or the FBI and the ATF is helping us with that aspect.
Sheriff, you mentioned whether any injured or deceased come from the hotel. Were they all in the concert, or were any in the hotel area?
I'm not sure, because we had people that were deceased and injured outside the vicinity of the concert area, so it'd be hard to determine or make that determination at this point. We're obviously going to have to talk to all those injured individuals to make that assessment.
How many people who were injured were shot, and how many were injured running away?
I don't know, ma'am. The people have been displaced in 5 separate hospitals, so it's going to require an extensive review of that communication with them to determine that. So thank you very much. I appreciate everybody's time, and I appreciate everybody here to the back of me and their support of our police department. And we will keep you regularly updated. I can't give you an exact timeline at this point, but we will keep you informed as we receive information. Have a great day. Thank you.
All right, that's the 4th update we've received from the Las Vegas Police Department. You just heard the sheriff say we have completed the investigation of the shooter's room. He brought the weapons in on his own, confirming he acted alone. The sheriff saying, I do not know what or who could have possibly prevented this act from happening. We also just heard from the mayor of Las Vegas, Carolyn Goodman, saying our first responders have acted phenomenally. What we ask for is blood. We have people in need in area hospitals lining the hallways. If you are healthy and able to donate, please donate your blood. Also, confirmation from the FBI. We have determined this point that there is no connection at this point to an international terrorist group. All this a short time after President Trump called this an act of pure evil. At least 58 people dead, more than 500 taken to hospitals after that gunman opened fire on the Las Vegas Strip last night. The massacre happened on the final night of an outdoor country music festival. 22,000 people at a concert when the sound of shots broke out during the final song. The bullets came from the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Hotel and Casino across the street. You continue to hear them now. The gunman identifies as 64-year-old Stephen Paddock from the Vegas suburb of Mesquite. Police found him dead after they used explosives to break into his room. They say he had multiple weapons. We are told he fired round after round after round into that crowd, the gunfire lasting for minutes as thousands of people panicked and ran for their lives from the sound of this.
The number of people that have died associated with this event has increased. Right now we're using the number of 58. The number of injured, we are using the number of 515. And as you can tell, as the hours go by, that number continues to increase.
58 killed, 515 at least injured. Adam Housley is live for us in Las Vegas with the latest there. Adam?
Yes, Andrew, as the morning has come along, we're still seeing people that are being released, people that have been being interviewed. We saw about 6 musicians walk by here maybe a half an hour ago. One of them had tears in his eyes. You're seeing that kind of response. One of the survivors of the shooting texted me and said that she sat down after talking to authorities and it kind of hit her and she just started bawling. That is the reaction now as this is starting to sink in. When we got here last night and they said there were 2 dead and 24 injured, we knew that number was going to go up. No one could have ever dreamed of it hitting 58 and possibly even more. We want to go back to that sound again. That there's so many videos out there, but take a listen one more time of what people heard when the shots started. Take a listen. The last singer at a 3-day festival on the Las Vegas Strip. Why wouldn't it be something like that? Why wouldn't it be some sort of pyrotechnics to celebrate the end of this concert series that took place here for 3 days? And then when people started going down, they realized that this was very serious. This was not fireworks, but this was somebody shooting. And that continued. We ran into people of all types. One of them came out and I saw the blood on his shirt. I saw the blood on his shoes, and he talked to me in a way that I knew was not just a normal individual. He obviously had some tactical training, and we found out he was a first responder from the Los Angeles Fire Department. And here's what he had to tell us at one point about how bodies were being taken out. Take a listen. When we walked up on this earlier, I said that was probably used as a gurney. When I just met you, you walked over and you said, you know what that is? And I said, that's a freezer that's probably used as a gurney. So you're telling me that really was, they used
it as a gurney, and the tables that were inside were as gurneys as well. They were using everything we can. We're using the rails between the partitions in between. We were carrying bodies out with that as well.
Robert Hayes is his name. That's the firefighter from Los Angeles. He's a hero. He was inside. They gave him a vest. He stayed in there with SWAT. He personally pronounced 20 people dead, at least, he says. He helped drag bodies out. He was one of the many heroes that were inside that helped save lives. The number is already horrific. It could have been even worse. At one point, he said 3 bodies not far from that freezer, which he saw the body on top of as they were wheeling it down the street, were carried out on tables that vendors were using to sell items to people at the concert. And as they got about a quarter mile away, they realized that the individuals had all died. And so they put them over to the side of the road, they covered them, and they went back to get more. That is what happened here. And that is what people are dealing with, Sandra. I'm going to show you a live look real quick before I give it back to you as well. Once again, to give you an idea of the perspective, those are the windows that you heard the sheriff say were knocked out with a hammer-like instrument. They don't know if it was a hammer, but something like that. That's how he got the access for them to be able to shoot out at the people below. If you come straight down, you see the main stage. That is where Jason Aldean was singing. That is where thousands of people had gathered shoulder to shoulder to watch him sing his most famous songs. And as you come across that entire area, basically a couple of acres, a vacant lot a few days ago, now a horrific crime scene with bodies still inside. The sheriff says it'll probably be another 12 hours, if not longer, before they have a chance to start removing those bodies and getting their people, their investigators out of there. There's still much to gather and much to know. Sandra?
Still a horrific scene there. Adam Harris?
Hi, Adam. It's Harris. We're breaking format a little bit here, and we're just going to kind of go along and ask you some questions. Here's mine for you. And you did address the first one I had about why there were 2 windows. That gives a different vantage point if that was on purpose. And from what you've learned from authorities, yes, it was with that hammer-like instrument. The other thing that I noticed with this news conference was there wasn't a lot of explanation about why that 550 number popped. But I've watched in some of our reporting, and as I talked with witnesses this morning, that there were people that were literally shocked and dazed. and that it took a bit
Yes.
for them to actually get some help. And you're learning about that scene. You've been there since 10 o'clock last night. How did that happen?
Well, I mean, think about it for again. I mean, we're in Las Vegas. It's a venue that's right across the street from the Mandalay. There's lights, and it's the Vegas Strip. So you've got the whole energy. It's the end of the night, the end of a 3-gig concert series. People have been drinking for 5 or 6 hours. So you have that comes into play here. Also, people will go into different ways of shock, I'm told that way, depending on how much alcohol and how your system reacts to it. You also have people that you're just not as coherent. You're at a concert. You're not supposed to be there to have to worry about being shot at. You're here to listen to music. So you had people that maybe didn't get it as quickly as they could have if they had been 100% sober. You also have the idea that people really thought these were fireworks.
Yep.
I mean, this concert was over. And if you first hear that, and no one's thinking there's a guy up there shooting at everybody. I mean, that doesn't come to mind right away. And I had several people tell me they realized when they saw someone go down. One individual told me the girl next to him got shot in the head. I mean, that's what happened. And then you saw Jason Aldean run off stage, and then the place just went chaotic. And when you have 22,000 people having to exit, and it wasn't like they were completely compacted. There were a number of exits they could get out,
Sure.
but it still takes a few minutes to get that kind of people out. That gave the man more than enough time to just open fire at will.
Adam, it's Kennedy. I have a question about reuniting. Obviously, people are watching this all over the world, and there are family members in the region who have no idea whether or not their loved ones were at that concert, if they were hit, if they have survived, if they're in surgery. How are they reconnecting those family members?
There's a number of ways online. I don't have the actual phone number in front of me. I'm sorry, because we don't have computers out here because of the obviously the situation. But if they go online, you can Google it. I think foxnews.com, I believe, has the link as well. There's a phone number, and there's a way you can go on there and try to reach out. They're actually going to be facilitating that more. As we heard in that press conference at the convention center here in Las Vegas. So many people come here for conventions. It's obviously one of the most famous places in the world to go for a convention. That's the location where they're having family members go, and they're going to have hopefully victims go there as well. And they're going to set that up as being the location to try and reunite folks. At least that's what they said at the press conference.
Adam Housley, it's Brian Kilmeade. We've talked early this morning. I watched your reports at actually as early as 4 a.m. this morning. In the beginning, it was 20 killed, and maybe 200 were somehow injured. Now the number, staggeringly, 6 hours later, we're over 500, and now we have 50 plus who have lost their lives. Is there a sense on how many lost their lives from bullet wounds and how many in the stampede that followed afterwards?
Yeah, mostly bullet wounds. Brian, when we got here at 10:45 or something like that, 11, I guess around 11, because the shooter, we believe at that point had been taken out. We didn't know at that point, but now we know that he had already been taken out about the time we got here, because they were still in tactical gear when we showed up. When we got here, it was 2 dead and 24 injured. Take that into account. 2 dead, 24 injured. Now plus 58 dead, 500 plus injured. We knew that we were in a situation that was much worse when we found out there was a concert here, first of all, and we were heard that the shooting was coming from a higher ground, which anybody in military tactics knows is a very advantageous place to be. But then also we met a firefighter who you heard, Robert Hayes, and he himself, I mean, he told us, as they're telling us there's 2 dead, he says, Adam, they're wrong. They're going to get the numbers. They're getting the numbers wrong. They'll tell you more later, but I pronounced at least 20 dead myself. That's what I do, unfortunately. That's what I have to do in my everyday life, not like this. When Robert told me he himself had seen at least 20 bodies dead and had pulled many others out that were in not good condition at all, we knew we were in for something horrific. And Brian, to give you our perspective, guys, we're maybe a block away from where the actual vacant lot is. The building behind my photographer is a normal building that has 3 or 4 suites that you'd probably have a lawyer, legal office in one. The furthest one window on the right busted open, blood everywhere, blood drags on the ground. People over here to the right, there's a gas facility, storage gas facility. They knocked down the 6-foot cyclone fence with barbed wire on top. You've seen them around those gas facilities. We have them in all of our hometowns. They knocked the fence down. We're a block and a half away. They went and they tore into a shed. People were trying to find cover anywhere. It was complete and utter chaos.
All right. Thanks, Adam. Lisa, you have a quick question?
Yeah, Adam, we're hearing reports of hundreds lining up to give blood. Is there any information you can provide to any viewers that live in the surrounding area of where they could help out or where they could donate?
Yes, UMC Medical Center, I know, is a place that people know here in Las Vegas. They have an ongoing blood drive, and they have extra staff on, so I would recommend to go there. But you can go to any medical facility right now and give blood. They're asking for it. I mean, you're talking about 500 injured, and those numbers are fluctuating too, guys, because originally they said 400 were taken out in ambulances. Well, we know a lot of people we met were throwing people into cars in the back of flatbeds, you know, in SUVs, and that's not counting the ambulances. That's why those numbers are going up as well. So back to your original question, yes, you can give blood at a lot of places. UMC, I'm told, is the best place to do it.
Adam Housley, thank you so very much. And just to quickly say, Lisa, I did check out the Twitter page of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. They have all of it enumerated on where you can give blood and around the nation. I mean, because they'll take it there if they need to. They need so much of it right now. So
perfect.
That was part of our coverage. Let's have us join now Randy Sutton, former Las Vegas Metropolitan Police officer himself, a veteran of that police force for 33 years. Mr. Sutton, thank you so very much for being with us today. I want to start with, you know, the Mandalay is iconic along the Strip. How do you get into a place like that, do you think, with the kind of weaponry he had and go unnoticed since September 28th? I can only imagine people like yourself in law enforcement have to be talking about that on the ground right now.
Well, yes, thank you for having me. I appreciate it to talk about this horrific event. I think probably what he did, he surreptitiously smuggled the weapons in probably a golf bag, or he may have disassembled them and had them in his luggage and then reassembled them. The fact of the matter, he had 10 weapons that we have been reported, and so that didn't happen overnight. He'd been bringing them up to his room. You know, it had to be several trips. Plus, don't forget that he must have had a ton of ammunition. And of course, that's very, very heavy stuff. So this has been, he must have planned and plotted this for a good long time.
So the scope of the investigation, I would imagine, would be greatly aided by those, I don't know, thousands of cameras that they have along the Strip and inside and all around these hotels. I mean, pretty much today, you can't go anywhere without being captured, whether it's a smartphone or something that's permanent in that hotel.
Oh, and the surveillance the equipment that the hotels have is second to none. There will be a tremendous amount of security camera footage that will have to be gone over. Not to mention, the sheriff already asked for anyone who had cell phone footage to bring it to police headquarters. This investigation is going to be monumental in its length and breadth, trying to determine what motivated this madman, this psychopathic killer, to inflict the carnage that he did, and you know, there will be no closure for any of these families until they determine what that motive was.
Yeah, 33 years on the very police department that is responding to all of this, aided by the ATF, aided by the FBI, and I would imagine other municipalities around that have just come to help out.
They could be gunned down at any moment. Does that sound like the training that you had?
Hell yes, it does. Not only is it training, but it's spirit and it's heart. It is the warrior spirit that is so important in policing that these men and women brought to bear. And I too have heard absolutely amazing stories of courage, of commitment, of honor, and we're going to be hearing about these for a long time. And this is what we must concentrate on. This is what we must revel in, because if we think only about the death only about the heartbreak.
America comes together as one. We ask God to help us during this difficult time. Kennedy, really going to the point of the lieutenant there, as we just heard from the president.
Yeah, and making sense of this at this point when the body count is rising and there are so many questions, it is almost impossible. One of the first things I wonder, Lieutenant, you've worked in the city for decades. What do hotels do at this point? How do they change their protocol to ensure the safety? As you know, this person has unfortunately given a blueprint to soft targeting.
Well, you know, this is the greatest nightmare come true. Law enforcement has long thought about these type of attacks, and this is going to be studied for a long, long time, and there will have to be a review of all the procedures that are in place, including response procedures. Although I got to tell you, the Metropolitan Police did an absolutely stellar job in identifying where this individual was. Even though we do know that there was quite a time period, because identifying him and then responding and then breaching the door took probably somewhere around 20 minutes, which is an absolute eternity.
Yeah.
But they did very bravely blew open that door, and the coward that this punk was didn't have the guts to stand up to the police. Instead, he took his own life. He took the coward's way out.
Well, as I just mentioned, we heard from the president a few moments ago. He had new reaction on the Las Vegas massacre. At least 58 people are dead. More than 500, we know now, are hospitalized. The president calling it an act of pure evil, offering his prayers to the victims and urging American unity in what he calls a time of darkness.
We pray for the entire nation to find unity and peace. And we pray for the day when evil is banished and the innocent are safe from hatred and from fear. May God bless the souls of the lives that are lost. May God give us the grace of healing, and may God provide the grieving families with strength to carry on.
Chief White House correspondent John Roberts is live now with more reaction from the president. The president, John, struck a very somber tone as he spoke from the White House a short time ago.
Well, Sandra, good afternoon to you. I mean, a tragedy like this, as president, you've got to come forward. You've got to express sympathy. You've got to try to bind the wounds of the nation as best as possible, particularly given the fact that those wounds are still so wide open and so raw. The fact that this happened only a matter of hours ago, and then try to search for meaning and unity in all of this, and try to find, as the president said, some ray of light in the face of this horrific tragedy. The president has issued a proclamation today to honor all of the victims of this mass tragedy in Las Vegas, ordering all flags here at the White House and federal buildings across the country, on U.S. military bases, Navy ships worldwide, to be lowered to half-mast in the case of the Navy, until the 6th of October. And then the president, with some very solemn words this morning, and some very terse words for the person who perpetrated this horrible act, from the diplomatic reception room this morning. Listen here.
It was an act of pure evil. Hundreds of our fellow citizens are now mourning the sudden loss of a loved one, a parent, a child, a brother or sister. We cannot fathom their pain. We cannot imagine their loss. To the families of the victims, we are praying for you, and we are here for you.
You know, and so many people who were affected by this so deeply are still trying to make sense of how a person could have gone up to that room in the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Hotel and obviously cased the place out, because that festival was going on for 3 days, and just sat there waiting for an opportunity to shoot down as many people as possible, and then looks like blew out the window with rifle fire, and then just opened fire on all of those unsuspecting people down there on that concert field as they were listening to Jason Aldean. The president, though, saying that in moments of tragedy and horror, Americans always come together as one. Listen here.
And it always has. We call upon the bonds that unite us, our faith, our family, and our shared values. We call upon the bonds of citizenship, the ties of community, and the comfort of our common humanity. Our unity cannot be shattered by evil.
I've talked to people at the National Security Council here at the White House, as well as people in the intelligence community. So far, there's no indication that this was anything, Sandra, other than a lone wolf attack. And at the moment, they have no idea what drove this person over the edge to commit the heinous crime that he committed late last night. Sandra?
Certainly a long investigation ahead. John Roberts at the White House for us. Thank you. Brian Kilmeade's on the couch. What a day.
Unbelievable. And, my first instinct was this morning was I saw what happened in Canada. I saw what happened in France. And I said, OK, here goes ISIS/Al-Qaeda again. And then you find out details that this guy, Stephen Paddock, who the Mesquite police where he lives said they had no interaction. His background check shows no derogatory information. There was no indication that anything was wrong with him, even in Las Vegas or from his family. So I think the anger people feel is understandable, especially the nature of his crime. You shoot people in the back of the head while they're looking at a concert while you're 1,100 feet away. It's the other definition of cowardice. And then he kills himself. Nothing but questions and carnage. An unbelievable combination.
A couple things came out of that most recent news conference that I took notes on. One was a point of fact about how they think that those windows were blown out, actually not by a gun, but by some sort of hammer-like device, that instrument, as the sheriff described it, on both vantage points, right? So he would have had two different areas to look through, giving himself that. The other thing was the fact that they had employees from that hotel that were going in and out of that room since September 28th and say that they didn't notice anything out of the ordinary. And the last thing has to do with this person of interest, and that she's out of the country, that they have located this Mary Lou Danley, I believe is her name, Mary Lou Danley, his companion, as it's been described in reports. A couple of details about his background. He worked for Lockheed Martin Defense at one point in one of their departments for about 3 years. And they made a statement, Lockheed Martin made a statement, the giant engineering firm, defense firm. So it's interesting. He had a background as a pilot, owned 2 planes. There's more that we're learning about him that really would talk about stability. I mean, that kind of commitment. He lived in a senior. So we're learning lots of details about him.
Kennedy, you were asking how people can get help finding their loved ones. The human toll here, this is not over. We do not know the extent of the fatalities yet. We don't know just how bad it is yet. But what we heard from at the top of the hour was the mayor of Las Vegas, Carolyn Goodman. She said, we need help. We need blood. She said their hospitals are overwhelmed with victims of this. Their rooms are filled. There are people in need of medical attention that are lining the hallways. It's a situation that, as far as the numbers are concerned, could get a lot worse.
Yeah, it's truly on every level mind-boggling. I mean, it's impossible to wrap your head around the size and scope, the depth of this person's evil, the fact that he obviously wanted a much higher body count than we have already seen. And none of it makes sense, because oftentimes, we sort of leap to conclusions early on about what might motivate someone like this. Is it religious? Is it political? The Daily Mail did an interview with the shooter's brother, who said that he must have snapped. He was not a political person. He was a normal guy. They weren't necessarily in touch, and that the family is completely dumbfounded.
Actually, I have a little bit from that interview. He said it feels like an asteroid just fell on us, his brother. And he said, he is just a guy, and he freaked. He is just a guy, and he freaked.
Well, and it's certainly remarkable to hear that from his brother, because sometimes when we see things like this, the family, there were some signs, there was either some sort of mental health issues in the past, or they have said things that, were a little bit off to the family. And so it's certainly interesting to hear those comments from the brother. But I want to reiterate, with all of us waking up this morning and just being so heavy-hearted, at just the loss of life today. I want to reiterate some of the things that the president said this morning. And he said that, we take solace knowing that even the darkest space can be brightened by a single light. And even the most terrible despair can be illuminated by a single ray of hope. And so I think we look for some of that ray of hope, and some of that lies in the fact we're hearing hundreds of lining up to give blood to help one another. We hear about the first responders, just the average Americans that were there, and instead of running, to take cover, they helped the people next to them who were bleeding, who were in despair and needed that comfort. And so I think as we all sit here today, heavy-hearted, we got to look for that light, and we've got to look for that hope in society as well.
However, we are getting emails about Senator Murphy of Connecticut saying, stand up to the NRA and guns are the problem.
Yeah, it has
Hillary
turned
Clinton, similar
quickly
tweets.
political. Quickly political.
And it'll get to that later this week. As you just mentioned, surely we're going to hear additional statements, particularly from those on the left, going to the conversation about gun
I don't
control.
think they're going to wait till later this week.
No,
Well,
they haven't. Hillary Clinton has already tweeted several times about the NRA, and they're politicizing this while people are still in surgery and dying. It's like this is still a very fluid situation, and there will be plenty of time to figure out and dissect all of that.
The rest
and of course,
time.
A political discussion will ensue. But right now, let's allow people to get out of crisis and make sense of this picture.
Also, find out where they got the guns. Before you say that this is wrong and this is wrong, so far there's no indication that he got any of the guns illegally.
Well, and we also know from law enforcement, this guy seemed to have no background with them. They had no knowledge of this guy
He
previously.
did seem to pop up out of, at one point I was watching one of the previous news conferences, and it wasn't just that he didn't have a record. They actually said it seemed like he just kind of popped up out of nowhere. He had lived in Mesquite, Texas for a while, and then he moved to Mesquite, Nevada. So they were looking for, well, is there any connection? And to your point, Brian, one of the things that we learned from the very last news conference is one of the reporters said, is there any reason to or any way to determine yet if any of the guns were illegal or modified to be illegal in any way? And the response was, we just don't know yet.
They were automatic and not modified. That's what they said, that there's no indication that they were semi-automatic made to be automatic, right?
Well, and that's the concern as well, is, too often when things like this happen, there's this rush to, judgment or a rush to partisan politics when there's so many answers that we just don't have right now. And to Kennedy's point, there are people who are grieving right now, who have lost a loved one or don't know if a loved one is going to survive.
People who are bleeding and fighting for their lives.
Which, by the way, the phone number that they're leading people to is the coroner's office, 866-535-5654. That's a phone number that's out there. Again, these are all on foxnews.com. You can access these phone numbers from there as well. But the FBI, obviously, as you heard from the sheriff earlier, is vital in their assistance to this investigation. And you can assume right now, and the sheriff confirmed they've already gone through the entire room that the shooter shot from, but you can assume they're probably going through that entire hotel, every camera available, to find out this guy was there since September 28th, last Thursday. 4 days ago, he checked in. They need to find out what his activity was since then.
He built 2 platforms, had at least 10 guns. I thought it was interesting, though, in his first press conference said, he's local, we knew of him. And I said to myself, okay, what do you mean you knew of him? Are we going to find out there was some indication there was an issue? There's really been no follow-up on that yet. Families in Orlando, we saw the brother, Eric, come out and talk and say they're worried there might be some retribution on him and his 90-year-old mother down the street. Hopefully Americans won't come to that.
Real quickly, we've been talking about helping people out. We put that phone number that Sandra just read, but look at this line right now. I mean, Kennedy, you talked about that spirit in all of us, and so did you, Lisa, about just give a helping hand. You got to open a vein right now. They need your blood. And this line right now is for people who are standing to give their blood. They had several locations. I know United Blood Services was one that the mayor and other officials in the city were giving for Las Vegas. So if you live in that area, obviously that means something to you. But right now you can go online. You can go to the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, to their Twitter page, and they are tweeting out information constantly about the exact addresses and locations that they want to send people to. But this line is incredible, the show of help, the show of love, the show of force, if you will. I want to talk with somebody now who is actually performing on stage in Las Vegas at a different venue. Kaya Jones, you know her, platinum recording artist from the Pussycat Dolls. She was on stage during that concert just before the shooting. Kaya, you're with us by phone?
Yeah, hi, Harris.
Hi. I don't want to color it anymore. I want you to tell us what happened last night. So you're about to perform, and time and place. Tell us what was happening.
Well, I'm friends with John Rich from Big and Rich, and they were third from the closing performer, Jason. And we went out and, you know, they asked if I would be an honorary bartender for veterans because they invite veterans up. And it was pretty amazing. They asked me to be this honorary, you know, bartender, and they know I do a lot of work with veterans. And so the veterans came up, and it was a unifying moment. I mean, you had every color, creed, religion in the audience. It was a beautiful moment. We got off stage. We went and hung out in the bus. Jason went on. We went on to the next venue. By the time the guys went up on stage at the next venue, we were getting chatter on the phones that there was an active shooter and that our friends that were there were barricaded in the back. One of our really good friends who was actually performing right after us, he's the DJ, part of that set, was there when the active shooter started. His wife and baby were actually on the 32nd floor of Mandalay Bay.
Wow. So has she said if she heard anything from that vantage point on the 32nd floor at the Mandalay Bay?
I honestly don't know at this point. I mean, we finally heard from him that they were okay, and that was the last we heard from him. I think he's probably just happy to have his baby and wife because he was in the thick of it backstage. We then were told that there were more than one shooter and that they were moving them south on the Strip. We were then locked down at the bar that we were at. You know, John Rich got up on the mic, you know, let everyone know, all the patrons know, because nobody knew what was going on. We were getting real-time feed by people that were actually at venue. So we heard how many were being shot, you know, guys from the meet and greet that were deceased at that time. We were getting wind of all of it. So it was a very somber moment, you know, and with only one gun in this bar.
Right. So we had a veteran police department member on with us before, and I know from being on the street, I mean, there are so many cameras. You call it eye in the sky. I want others who are here on the couch to talk with you, Kaya, but I want to ask a question too. You and I were texting earlier, and you said, look, I have friends who were in the thick of this. You had one friend in particular. What did she tell you?
I mean, we had friends that were on the ground when the shooting started that were trampled. We had friends that were backstage that, you know, couldn't get off of the stage, couldn't get out of backstage. Mm-hmm. We had friends that, you know, were running for their life. I still have not confirmed all of my friends that were there, but a lot of people were affected. I mean, you know, it's a unifying moment of what we do. And, of course, you know, with everything that's going on in our nation right now, it's just we need more of those unifying moments. So it's just a very somber moment to know that this is how an incredible festival went. You know, there's 30,000 people last night that were there.
Wow. Kaya Jones, thank you very much. And thank you for sharing your perspective on this. Those unifying moments that you're talking about, that's what the president called for today, for us to come together as Americans. Thank you. Keep watching Outnumbered.
You guys.
We're coming right back. Stay close.